right, welcome to the Prospect Podcast. We have two esteemed and tremendous guests on here. I'm Coach Human. As always, we're here at the Prospect Podcast, and to my left, see the Derek. The key is to have four. Now that I see it, so everybody's like got equal footing. That's the way it should work. Right? Derek's here to Coach D's here to my left. As always, with me on the Prospect Podcast, we have two fantastic guests. We're going to talk a little speed development, and a bunch of other little topics, all related to it. But we wanted to have two guys that I really consider fantastic people in this space, and both have slightly different takes on things. So that's why we want to bring it together. And I think that's really important part of the conversation. There's a lot of things that are going to be similar, and having me and Derek having interviewed both gentlemen, Tony, this is Tony's third appearance. This is Coach King's second appearance. There are things that are very, very similar that you'll hear and you'll say, okay, yeah, they're aligned on these things, and there are other things that they may not be as aligned on. But so that's why we want to have this conversation. It's all pushing the whole thing forward, and that's the whole key on athlete development, is really continuing to push it forward and help athletes continue to improve. So real quickly, background, Tony Holler, for those of you who live under a rock, he runs the Feed the Cats program. Tony, one of the great accomplishments is now when I type it into AI and I type in, I need some stuff from on Feed the Cats, workout or something like that. Amazingly, you've gotten to the mind of AI, and they now know know what I'm talking about, which is pretty amazing. So when I spit out workouts for my middle school track athletes, and I hand it to, I mean, I run my own group, but when I hand to the coach and say, here's the workouts, I said, you need a mid distance workout with some speeds. I give it to them, and they're like, how do you do it? I'm like, man, it's AI. You just got to know what to ask some of these questions, and then you modify depending on the workout you want to do. You know what I mean? And you just change it around, pull this out or whatever. But pretty awesome. Tony, like I said, runs the Feed the Cats program. He speaks all over the country now. He organizes his own group with the track football consortium. They speak all over the country. He's a fantastic track and field coach himself in his own right. He was a physical education teacher for a long time. I'm not physical education teacher. Sorry. He was was it science or math?
Chemistry.
It was history.
Okay.
Chemistry.
I have to go now.
Chemistry.
Yeah.
Chemistry.
I gotta go.
Chemistry teacher.
Don't worry, Coach King, you're good.
Chemistry forever. And, an unbelievable track and field coach, and really has had, most notably, had one of the best sprinters of all time in the state of Illinois, and that athlete has since gone on to run the 9.9s, I believe, in the 100-meter dash, and but he's one of just many of the great athletes that he's coached. So it's great to have Tony back on. So Tony, welcome back to the podcast.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Coach King, we had on, I think, a couple weeks ago, maybe less, and it's really great to have him back on. Strength and conditioning coach, one of the kind of guys in the forefront of speed, specifically with basketball. Going back to the late 80s, 90s time period with the Mavs, and then he coached the Cowboys in strength conditioning during the whole famous Dallas Cowboys run. And as a Dallas Cowboys fan, has not been duplicated, unfortunately, since then. But Coach was really intricate in that process with them. He also was intricate in the bobsled community with multiple Olympians on the USA side, and then I think on the skeleton side with Lebanon, and really just done fantastic things from that standpoint. And working on speed, and obviously has his own training facility as well, where he works with athletes to this day. And he was just with us a couple of weeks ago, and we had some great discussion on him. He's a legend as well in the space. I mean, we reeled it off last time, numerous, not just NFL players and NBA players, but obviously guys he's trained directly that have been Olympians, NFL players, NBA players, and other sports as well. So it's great to have you back on, Coach.
Great to be here, all you guys. Thank you.
It's really great, and to kind of have these conversations, and really, I saw some of this stuff with I think Tony's been involved with it, and then I obviously Chris Corpus does a bunch of these kind of things in his own right with some of the guys that he kind of deals with and hangs out with, and I think that these kind of conversations are great because some of the times that I'm seeing athletes run, and track's obviously an easy one to see, times in a 100-meter dash. I would have never thought in my wildest dreams that 3 kids would run in a 9 under 10 seconds in 100 meters in the final, as happened a couple weeks ago with a 9.8 and then 2 9.9s in the same exact race. And part of it is you guys and all the coaches out there really working to evolve the speed development and the science behind that and the art behind it, right? Because it's a little bit of both, and um, and really to work to continue to help athletes to improve. So your guys' contribution is amazing. I want to dive right into the first question, and um, we'll go first. We'll let Steve. I mean, we'll let Bob talk first about this, and we'll kind of dive into it. Then I'll let Tony dive into it. Um, so for you, the first question is, what is the single most important factor? We'll dive right into it in developing elite speed in athletes, and what is probably the most overrated portion of that training process? So, what is the most important thing that you think in order to develop them? And what is the thing that maybe people do that is really overrated in that development? I'll let Bob dive into that first.
We start with the mechanics and technique, no matter who you are. And I think I've said this previously that mechanic produces efficiency, efficiency produces speed, and speed exposes flaws. And that way we can continue the cycle of improving. And so if, we all talk about kinetic chain and whatnot. So if you have a mistake somewhere, it's going to run up the chain. And so, for example, if the most common thing I see with the young ones, well, there's not a most common, but a common thing is the head, and they don't know what to do with it. So the head's either twisting, bobbing, doing, or whatever. And if the head moves, it's going to trigger something else to hiccup. And so if your chin is up, you're going to end up going back too far in your shoulders and spine. If your head is down, down is bad because it pushes everything toward the ground. So we just start with the head, we tell them head has 2 functions, looking and breathing. And so just keep it still, and you can't make you run faster if using your head. So we just simply start at the top and work our way down. That's a tough call because the feet are obviously so important in running. Either they're shuffling or stomping or 100 other bad things. But we start with a jog. When our warm-ups, when we start with a jog, that's when we start speed training because they expose themselves. Are their hands at their pockets? Are they shuffling? And so we know exactly what to do when speed training starts on the warm-up when I say go. And so as soon as go comes out and they start moving, we can see posture and the whole litany of things that need to be in place for good speed mechanics. So what was the other part you were asking about?
And is there something that's overrated as far as of development wise, like something that you might have seen done, and you might have done yourself that you're like, that really was something that everybody's been doing. They've been doing it since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And this is really kind of almost a waste of time or an overrated part of the process.
Well, I think by far coaches get in love with drills. And so we have a menu, so if I don't even bother counting it, but if I have 20 items on my menu, I will pick 8 or 10 to go through on that day's workout because I don't want my guys to drill great. I want them to run great. And if you think the drills are the answer, you're not looking deep enough. The drills are a starter. Get the moment, get the motion correct. I mentioned before, we do a thing called pedal the bicycle. That's not how we run, but it's a good drill to get them to understand the path of the heel, the foot, and this foot cycle. So the fact that, I have a menu of drills and I have to do them all, I think is a mistake. So you don't have to do them all. Get ready and then get to the meat of the program. So don't try to drill great. That's the thing I'm always running into.
Tony?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear Bob talk because he kind of starts with the technical mechanical part, and I kind of feel like that's kind of the overrated thing. That sometimes when people talk to me, they expect me to be able to turn their 11 flat kid into a 10 flat kid or something by fixing something in his mechanics.
Right.
And that's seldom, I think, the biggest problem. Bob and I are probably on the same page mechanically. The head thing is interesting. I've never heard it said like that, but I totally agree with forward and back. And I just talk about posture. We just need to be as tall as possible. And that usually corrects the forward or backward lean. But I'm also a believer, and I get some crap for this, but with David Weck talking about head over foot, when you hear and see head over foot, you will see in acceleration when the feet are landing a little bit further apart, the head really does wobble side to side. It does it quickly, so it's hard to really see it. And I really don't coach head over foot, but I do coach this, that if you are stiff in the spine and your head is in the exact same place vertically, then you are not head over foot. And what we see with really fast kids, like in the NFL combine that have dreads in the back, those dreads flopping left and right because there is some head over foot. And I tell people that it's very similar to riding a bicycle uphill. You get a little more power as the head goes over the left foot and then over the right foot. Now, if you start cueing that head over foot, you may really mess people up. So I love the head conversation. Bob and I could probably go on and on about head stuff. But I think the main thing that I see to improve speed is a consistency that most people refuse to do. They refuse to sprint twice a week maximally. Some of these people are like, oh, we do an acceleration day and then an extensive tempo day and all this stuff. They refuse to sprint as fast as they can twice a week consistently. And I say speed grows slow. The speed grows like a tree. And so you have to water it consistently to really get good at it. And so piggybacking on that, the biggest problem people have is, I believe, and this is an inversion of accepted thought about training of all types, and that's periodization. That somehow we're supposed to take half the year and grind and to improve endurance and capacity and all those things. And too often during that half of the year that we're doing that base work, we are not sprinting maximally twice a week. And so we're leaving so much on the table. So in my program, we never drift from a state of performance. We are constantly trying to be fast week after week. And I could care less how much sprint endurance a kid has. We're building a foundation of speed and explosive ability.
I think that's a great question. One of the great debates, because when you go and look at, some of the great, if you pull up the PDF manuals of the old Baylor coach, right, and his 400 meter, and his philosophy was very different from that and had tremendous amount of success, right? And then obviously when you train 100-meter dash athletes or guys get ready for the NFL combine, you're really starting in any kind of speed nurse is a complete waste of time. And then the question obviously begs, do you need any of it, right? So and one of the things I always tell people, which I found is a really good and there's a lot of ways you can cut the mustard on this, I think. But when you talked about your 23-second sprint, right? If you're going to do some level of speed endurance, that's it, right? And all out, see how far you can go. And whether you do that as like a 250 for time, but anything like that they're all out, that they should be on the floor because they're they're pushing everything to it, and it's at that max level that I think it does make a big difference. It's very, very interesting debate, and one of the things that and I'm curious your thoughts, and it's kind of like a sub question on this first one. I've always thought the base to me is the opposite. Is the base comes from really short bursts in the beginning, and then if you're, if they run a longer, let's say they're a 200-meter guy, then after you really built the foundation of speed, then you start doing stuff like your 23-second sprint or other things that you start to leverage into it, and in order to really get them to be able to carry that max velocity longer, right? And because that's obviously what the objective is in a longer sprint race. But I always thought, like, if we don't get the speed first, you're never going to get the speed. You know what I mean? It doesn't go the other way around. It doesn't go distance. The miler never gets the 40-yard sprint speed. You know what I mean? But the guy who's getting the 40-yard sprint speed, to me, can get to the 400 meters. But if he doesn't, the other way, and obviously Clyde Hart would probably disagree on all those things. But I'm curious your thoughts and just kind of what I kind of said there. I'll let Tony you go first on that, and then I'll let Bob rebuttal.
Yeah, you mentioned Clyde Hart, and people have to remember that if you're coaching 22-year-olds at Baylor compared to coaching 15-year-olds at Plainfield North High School, you're two different clientele here. And and if you are the number one track coach at the number one track school in America, you get to recruit 3 or 4 46-second 400 guys every year. So when you're talking about building a base of speed, Clyde got a base of speed from his high school athletes, from athletes that he had not met yet. So if I could have some high school coach do my work for me and get kids running, 10 low, 20 mid in the 200, and then come out and run a 46 low as a high school teenager, there's a good chance that I could get him down 2 seconds by improving his endurance. But you don't go through an endurance route with high school sprinters, and I wouldn't with college either, because I would always be trying to move that ceiling upward. Oh, and one other thing. The whole short to long thing, I say that we want to build a base of sprint and jump and strength. And then in the track season, our two main objectives is not to get fast anymore, because our base is there. It is to survive the year. Health is number one. And number two is to learn how to sprint further. That sprint efficiency and being able to sprint further. So I totally agree, Coach Schumann, your characterization of building that sprint base and then learning how to sprint further in season.
Bob, your thoughts?
Okay, give me a rephrase of the question so I can kind of narrow down on.
Yeah, rephrase. So basically, my premise was that a sprint base is very important, meaning short first, being able to develop that acceleration, and then if you're going to get them to be able to develop quote unquote speed conditioning, you develop the sprint base first, and then you start over time. You can go and elongate out the sprint work to be able to help them carry their max speed longer, versus the old way where use track as an example. They used to take guys in the fall and run them through 400 base runs in order to get a conditioning base, not a lot of work on speed. I'm sure lifting and all those kind of things, which I think is always critical, but less work on that and more work on the actual conditioning base. So kind of, what are your thoughts on that part of it?
There's a few decades of evolution going on in terms of the track and field and conditioning. And I just worked off the premise that if you want to get fast, you got to go fast. And so if I do training or conditioning runs that you have to pace, it better be your race, because you're going to memorize that. And We've seen it 1,000 times on the track where a guy has done so much of some kind of work that he comes, just say even on 200s. Some guy is not a 200-meter guy, just we're running those for conditioning, and they hit the straightaway and they take off. Well, what are you doing on the curve? Now you can't run full speed, but you can accelerate. And so what they do is they program their body for certain markers. And so I want to make sure that what we used to do is we never ran. I don't want to say never. We got away from 200s to run 150s, so we're accelerating on part of the curve and up to speed on the straightaway. So we're not having to worry about biomechanics or posture because we can now open up and go fast. And so I think the thing I'd like to say is in my track and field work, everybody was trained to be a sprinter. 3,200, you're going to be a sprinter. Okay, because if we're close at 200, we're going to win the race. 1,600 meters, if we're close at 200, we're going to win the race. So we did all the other things you need to do, and I got further and further away from base training because I wanted to get what I wanted to get. And so since I live in the speed world, what do I have to do to get speed? I have to go fast. Therefore, the distance is self-limiting. So that's kind of how I landed where I have.
No doubt.
Straight away.
And that kind of begs into like the next question, which is always like when you get coaches today, and I would say the majority of them, in my opinion, unfortunately, still do some of these things. But when you start to get into stuff like, okay, should gassers at any point be a part of the athletic curriculum? Now, obviously, in track, you're not doing gassers, right? But like if you go to sport-based stuff, football, basketball, soccer, you roam into almost any field or court, and it's the opposite that isn't a part of some part of their workout. Okay. And I'm curious. Obviously, I know where Tony stands on this, but I'm curious, and I'll let Tony go first on this one. But where does conditioning, if at all, have any importance in the sport specific world? And if it does have an importance, okay, where should some of this stuff be placed?
Yeah, well, in track and field, we don't run gassers, but we could call it repeat sprint ability, where you're not fully recovered. And if you're not fully recovered, I think you're memorizing some sloppy technique, and so I say you've got to sprint train when you're fresh. You got to pick the 2 days of the week where you're going to be the freshest. If you have practice, you don't sprint train after practice. So I would say that that obviously any type of repeat sprint ability is not important in track and field, but you could argue it is in football. So that's why I think football coaches have thought, well, gassers are a great idea at the end, because that's really what football is all about. It's a 40-yard sprint, and then you're going to rest for 30 seconds and do another one. But what happens is it's really just chasing fatigue, in my opinion. I think that instead of looking for after practice conditioning to get your kids prepared for game demands, you need to improve and gamify your practices themselves. If your practices do not prepare your kids for games, then your practices suck. And we need to start looking at it that way. And I'm a big advocate to not doing punishment running. I think running for punishment is dumb. And I think that after practice conditioning sometimes is like a dark cloud over the heads of players that force them to either coast or try to survive practice. And I think if you're coasting in practice or just surviving practice, you are not performing in practice. If you're not performing in practice, I don't know how in the world your game performance ever improves. So instead, I say that tired is the enemy, not the goal, and never let today ruin tomorrow. And I also say, send your kids home with gas in the tank every day, that the love of practice, instead of the misery of practice, the love of practice will create tough, enthusiastic athletes that become really good football players, basketball players, lacrosse players, whatever.
No doubt about it. Okay. Bob, I'm curious your thoughts on this as well.
Um,
And specifically because you probably came from a time period where that was a big deal, right? When you
well,
were
okay, but we evolved. Okay, so
yeah. That's
but,
why I want to hear your thoughts on
but
this.
here's the deal.
Yeah.
There's a cliche in here somewhere, plan the work and work the plan. By failing to plan, you're preparing to fail, and all that. All that's true, but execution wins it. So, for example, like I said, we went 32-2-1 in whatever it was, 3 years in our football program, and our conditioning matched the elements of a game. So let me lay it out so you can kind of see how it works to get an end result. So there's not a hard and fast rule that I lived by. We went out on Monday, and the first thing we did was do our warm up and run 110s. Every other week, we did high speed 110s that were on the clock with a long rest, half the number of reps. And we wanted to get that fresh speed out of them. Burst, take the dread out of what do we got after practice. Take that away. Do that first. Tuesday, now, just where I'm in my background, we had way too many two-way players. So Tuesday, we went out, we had to grind. It wasn't game situation, but we had to work hard, because Friday night, it's not just two-way players, it's the duration of the event. It's a 3-hour plus event. So you have to be able to focus, recover, do all the football things for 3 hours. And so on Tuesday, we went out, did our practice, our hardest day, contact if we needed to. And that was the body of the practice. Then, because it's kind of, whatever you want to call it, some sort of conclusion I came to, we ran what I called crossfires. I just had to call it something, right? So we start at the goal line, at the sideline goal line, run across 10 yards, and down the field to the far 40. That was 390 yards. And not to be accurately scienced or anything, I wanted to open the lactic acid floodgates. And so we did that after practice. Take your pads off. You're not fresh. If you want to call it fourth quarter, fine. But you have to find a way to fight through that fatigue. It's mental as much as it is physical. We finished at the far 40, walked back. I timed it. We're running 1-to-1. You run 60 seconds, you get 60 seconds rest, go again. And we ran 2 of those. That's it. We're only ever going to run 2. Come back on Wednesday, and we did our practice, lightening up a little bit. End of practice, pads off. We have again, this is my version. We had an 8-minute run. So what that involved was jog for 6 minutes, walk a minute, run a minute. And that's 8 minutes, but it's not all running, but it's kind of aerobic. Now, after my theory being after an hour and 45, 2 hours of practice, it's becoming aerobic because you're not fresh. And so it was a timed run because linemen are going, wide receivers are going, and I'm not putting everybody to make a certain distance in a certain time because it's not going to happen. Now we got to deal with, are we going to punish? Are we going to do this? Or whatever? No, we're not punishing. Just you run 8 minutes. And so if you run a half a mile or 5 miles, I don't care. And then Thursday is the back off. And then we found out that on Friday, never tired, because I had a head coach that I was under before I started all that. And he was practice is your conditioning. And we lost the game in the fourth quarter, and I was livid because we ran out of gas. And one of those moments where that's never going to happen again, ever. So I went to the head coach because I hadn't moved up yet. Went to the head coach, said, look, we can't ever let that happen again. Let me have it. Just turn it over to me and I'll take care of it. And then from then we went on a serious run. and got everything in order. So where are we headed with this? Conditioning is the extension of the central system against stressors. That's kind of a fancy way of saying, work when you're tired. Okay, because we condition, right? Physically, mentally, everything. So if you run, let's just say you're a fitness person, you run for 20 minutes, all right, I'm done, I'm fit. All right, today's the big one. I'm going out and run 25 minutes. Boom, at the 20-minute mark, everything says you're done, and you have to learn to push past that and so forth. I don't want conditioning to ever be a problem. I mean, I carried all this everywhere. If I go to the NBA, I went to the Major League Soccer. We're not going to get beat because we're tired. And I think every coach says that, but how you accomplish that's the story.
All right, so now I want to go back to Tony on this, because this begs the question. And you were still doing a Bob up till recently, I guess, or was this more back in the day? Did you change that approach, or is that an approach that kind of you're still firmly entrenched on?
Me? If I walk on the field today, that's what we're doing. It's
Okay.
it ain't broken, don't fix it program.
All right, so I want to kind of throw this back to Tony, and this is actually goes into my third question without even having to ask the third question. But so I one of the things that this kind of is like the classic question, and to me, that the practice should take care of most of that. And if you're going to do speed work or stuff that you need to get done to develop explosiveness, or even something in the level of conditioning, I'd rather them do it at the beginning of practice. And that way, when we practice, we focus on what we have to do, and have a great pace there. So, whereas I back in the day, I did very similar things to that. You know what I mean? When I first started as a head coach, I was man, like, you know what I mean? These guys need to be in a certain amount of shape. And then I evolved to really kind of think about it as like, Tony kind of put a kind of term to it, but it really evolved, with Feed the Cats, but it evolved to really like, from an injury standpoint, I was always became very, very concerned about guys pulling a hamstring running a level, you don't have to call it gassers, any kind of conditioning after, right? Because they were tired to begin with. And even doing conditioning games, meaning if I was going to do, like with young kids, relays after, I would do it at the beginning, started to do it at the beginning versus the end, because they were tired, and they would in a relay give everything they had. Okay, but some of them might not have anything left really, but then they give everything they have, and something goes, they step wrong. I always think about it from a nervous system standpoint. Okay, if everything's not aligned, now they're tired. They, especially when you're on grass, right? They don't get the feel for what the grass is like. They step wrong, they twist something. It may not even be a hamstring or a quad or one of those things. So, and I want to get back to you, Coach, but I just want to get Tony's thoughts on that first, and then we'll come back with you on your thoughts on it. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, well, I think that, obviously Bob and I are very different on this subject, and I realize and respect coaches who do it other ways, but what I've done is inverted the thoughts of the majority. I mean, conditioning has been a part of football since the beginning. If you really go through the history, that's how football coaches created toughness, is by getting their guys really fatigued. And I'm just the opposite. And when people say, well, how can a two-way player play both ways if he doesn't do extra conditioning? And I'm like, well, it's just the opposite. It's an inversion. If you have Travis Hunter at the University of Colorado, do you run him extra sprints at the end of practice? Well, what they decided was, no, he needed days off. that actually a two-way player needs less work during the week. And I know that's counterintuitive. I know that's an inversion of common thought. But what Feed the Cats coaches, and it's a crazy thing. A brief story: Ravenwood High School, Dan Quesenberry, they're 27-2 the last 2 years. Their biggest practice during the week is 28% of game volume. 28%. So they're not practicing so hard that the games are going to be easy. It's the other way around. They want to walk into that game only 80% in shape. But they want to be 100% healthy. And we're going to time sprints twice a week. And so we are going to get about 1 mile an hour faster during the football season, while almost every other team is 1 or 2 miles an hour slower throughout that football season. So Ravenwood High School, for their first game, 0 conditioning, 0 pre-practice, after practice, not a single aerobic workout in the summer. They go the first game 6 hours away into Mississippi, big, long road trip. And it's about 106 degrees in the shade, and it's humid. And they're down 2 touchdowns at half. They come back in the second half and win in the fourth quarter. Now, you would think that doing no conditioning would have destroyed this team in the heat because they have not prepared for it. But instead, they prepared in an inverse way by getting as fast as you can be, as healthy as you can be, and enthusiastic as you can be. And I realize, to the traditional people, that sounds nuts. But until you've seen it in action, it's going to feel nuts to you. So you know, I totally respect people who do it the other way, but I just advocate. I'm an advocate for a different way, and I think it's more fun for kids. And at the high school level, I think we need more kids out for football.
Your thoughts? And you're from a state, by the way, that obviously everybody plays football no matter what, right?
We don't have a shortage of football players.
Right.
You go to a public school game, and the players on the bench are stretched from 30-yard line to 30-yard line, 5 or 6 deep. So there's not a problem. Secondly, the idea that the conditioning, okay, there was a comment of, we're never tired. We don't run to exhaustion. Here's the workout. And, you know, I have said, all right, we're done. There's a coaching issue here. You have to have the eyes or the knowledge or the wisdom to know when to blow the whistle and go, all right, we're done. We'll have a good day. It may be, you know, in Texas, all of a sudden it's like, wow, it's 20 degrees cooler. All right, practice, we're out. Okay, no conditioning. And now we provide they get that mental, all right. And so we manipulate the stress. I'm giving you the program. Now, execution always is the key. What are the attendant circumstances? Okay, well, I have the ability to say no conditioning today, or I have the ability to enhance it or something. So coaches have to pay attention. I mean, I'm stating the obvious. You have to see where your team's at, what they need, what they don't need. And so if I'm doing a clinic talk, coaches want to see and hear and take notes. So here's the program. Well, how do you implement it is also the part. And I've said all this before about certain, people that relate things to, when I was with the Mavericks, I'd have parents, that I knew with kids and playing basketball, and Jordan was playing, and they go, well, I'll put my kid on Michael Jordan's program. Your kid is not Michael Jordan. So that program will help him a little bit, but there's no air coming with it. And so what we want to do is take us, where are we? What do we need? At halftime in September is hotter than hell. Fourth quarter, and it's hotter than hell. So the idea that we run is, I just lost the name, acclimatization. We have to get used to the heat, and that's a tricky element. So I mentioned earlier, it's a 3-hour plus event. So the duration is itself brutal. And then when we played run and shoot teams, it got longer because high school teams running the run and shoot got no business.
Oh, yeah.
They do not have that quarterback and those receivers. They may have 1 or 2 pieces, but that ball's on the ground way too much. the clock stops. We're, run the ball. Okay. You're not going anywhere. You have 9 yards passing at halftime, run the ball. And so there's factors that have to go into all this that we dealt with, every year. And so, to their credit, discredit, it's a copycat world. So coaches ran what the thing was going on. University of Houston came out and ran and shoot, and it spread. And back in the old days, we had, power option, wishbone. Everybody ran that, but didn't have the offensive line to do it. Just that's how we just operated. So conditioning has to factor in the game itself as far as, what's the mechanics of the game, run and shoot, spread and run and gun, or just, smash mouth, pound it out, pound and ground. And so you run the ball, you shrink the game. You throw the ball, you elongate the game. So, there's factors that have to go into your conditioning decisions.
I'm curious on capacity. So, because, so to me, kids today, as far as how they're raised, meaning how much are they out, like when we were kids, we would be outside for hours running around and developing. PE was a much bigger thing as far as general PE, I would call it, where the physical education there, and there might be places where people still do great. I'm not saying there aren't, but for the most part, a lot of PE teachers back then had a focus on general physical education, meaning your simple stuff, push-ups, sit-ups, those kind of activities. From the time they're very young, kids played outside. Capacity levels over all those years, my thought process is we're very different by the time they came to high school for those kids versus kids today who are very trainer orientated, more inside, less overall movement. And my question really is, does that play into capacity and maybe where some of the older conditioning elements could cause an issue for those athletes? Because much more than like, if I were to say, oh, when I was in college, we did, we ran 3-a-days when I was at UConn in college. I'm not kidding. 3 full practices. I would think back now, how did I even survive? And I'm sure we ran a ton of conditioning too, right? I've just unfortunately blocked that out of my memory as much as I can.
Good.
But it's one of those things that I feel like if you did that with any kid today, any kid, I'm talking like in the high 90 percentiles, they would not make it. You'd have 5 guys on your football team. And even in Texas, I think you'd have, for the most part, 5 guys on your football team because they just couldn't handle 3-a-days the way that we would in part of its capacity. Obviously, it's much more sensible what they were doing now, in my opinion. But the capacity levels to me are different. Bob, I'll let you kind of talk about that, your thoughts on that, and then I'll go to Tony.
Okay. There's 2 seasons in Texas. There's football season and off season, or right. Some people say football season and spring training. And so there is no break. You get time for, the holidays, of course, Easter, Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving, Christmas. But when school starts in January, you go into off season. Depending on the size of the school, you will get spring training. But if not, kids are either going to be in the track program or in football off season. And in football off season, all kinds of things go on, whether it's just running on the track in the weight room, or, some schools have the ability to have a mat room. So they're doing the agility drills and so forth. Then the week after school is out, summer begins. And so summer is regulated here in Texas. I think they get in the public schools get, I can't remember if it's 6 or 8 weeks of organized training, 4 days a week. But that's when the school can run the program, and then kids go, come to my place. Private schools can do more. So there is no off. And so we have been running, and we've been outside. We've been doing the things we can to get used to the heat. Coaches there's been more of a push to regulate the fall camp 2-a-days because it's a problem. It just can't not be hot. And so we have done a number of things to regulate the exposure to heat and still get practice done. I had things I did my way when I was a head coach, and it worked quite well. But it becomes creative coaching, but
Right.
you're just going all year round. And so the thing about conditioning is, if at some point you're still having to push your kids to condition, then you messed up way back. Okay, so if I am anti first day of fall practice, we're going to find out who wants it. That's the dumbest thing on the planet, because what have you been doing for the last 6 months? Okay, we're going to go practice. We're going to execute plays. We're going to run and lift, but conditioning has channeled itself into a more concise place. Okay, so that we're not looking for kids to go over this fence and puke. So that's kind of where I'm at this point.
Tony?
Yeah, could you reframe the question for me or restate it?
Capacity. So
okay,
my thought process
capacity. I'll just talk about capacity. Here's how I believe in developing capacity. I'm good friends with Brian Kula, who's famous for training Christian McCaffrey. We learn by stories. So here is the conditioning. I actually get tired of talking about conditioning. I just say stop doing it. But you could argue that what Christian McCaffrey did was an alternative type of conditioning. What he did was either what I call sprinting or X factor. X factor is exercises. They're explosive. Think plyos. Think hip mobility. Think med balls. That type of thing. What he would do is train for 5 seconds maximally, and then recover long enough to perform another exercise. And if you can imagine doing maybe 80 of these things in 90 minutes, you don't have to run laps. You don't have to run an aerobic focused anything. And what happens is, by stacking those anaerobic performance level things on top of each other, we find kind of an alternative way to do conditioning. And I'll never forget asking Brian Kula, does that type of work that Christian does, by the way, he only does it 4 days a week in the summer as well, and he gets 9 hours of sleep every night. Some pretty important things. This was back when Christian was with the Carolina Panthers. I said, Brian, does he have trouble if they do some random conditioning test? And he goes, well, the Panthers did 16 110s in 16 minutes. And
Brutal.
I said, did he get destroyed? And he said, no, he won it. And that doesn't surprise me a bit, because if you are fast, explosive, enthusiastic, and healthy, it is amazing what you can push yourself through. And I know it's counterintuitive, but we believe, people like Brian Kula and myself and Les Bellman and the people that are on this Feed the Cats bandwagon we believe that you can get an aerobic effect from stacking anaerobic work. Now, it says the opposite in the S&C handbook, but I never took that course.
Yeah, I want to move on to the next thing, but it's when you have a cheetah, the best thing you do is have him go fast, and then if you need to rest him for the next play and sub him out, he's better off if you sub him out and then come back again and go really fast and do what he needs to do versus doing it almost exhausted, because cheetahs can't just go, right? And that's why I think you see a lot of 2 platoon running backs in the NFL, right? Because you got cheetahs, and you used to workhorse them to death, and they'd be done, and those guys would be out in the NFL in 2 years. Now, by treating them more as cheetahs, these guys actually, if you look at some of these NFL running backs, unless they have a catastrophic injury, which obviously can happen, but short of that, they're actually able to last much longer now because of the 2 platoon using of running backs. They've lasted. These guys have, you can look at even like guys like Frank Gore, almost 15 years, 20 years, so it's pretty amazing. Obviously, it's obviously something I've continued to measure, but there's no doubt that it's a very, very important thing to really treat those cheetahs as cheetahs and figure out how to do that as much as possible. And then there are guys that are more that 400-meter type guy, and maybe he can go more at a certain level speed, but not as much. He's got to be in a different position. You know what I mean? He's got to be in a different position on the quote unquote football field. My next question, and this first, it goes to Tony first. Maximal strength and improving sprint speed. You have a great, it went viral where you talked about strength and improving sprint speed. And at what point does the strength stop translating to speed? Does it stop translating to speed? I'd love for you to talk about that, and then I'll flip it over to Bob.
Well, I think that the strength is good. The weight room is needed. I believe the weight room is supplemental to speed, and the speed should be the priority, which really hurts a lot of feelings. If you own a weight room, you would like for that to be the be all end all, because that's your business. And it's the ability to move is, I think one of the worst things you can do is lift only. And I've seen some people do that. I think maybe the thing that you're talking about that went viral, when COVID hit, I had 7 fast sophomores that could not train anymore, but found a gym. And I knew they were lifting because they posted flex pictures every day. And I've never seen guys get strong. I think they were lifting 4 hours a day. They got absolutely ripped. They were different humans when they came back to me after COVID. But what happened was, I noticed they didn't move the same way. They kind of waddled when they walked, and their arms were kind of like out away from their body. And one guy came back the same speed as he was when he left as a sophomore. The other 6 guys all got slower and never regained their speed. Scary, scary, scary stuff. Now, some people take that kind of blasphemy, like, oh my God, he's talking against the weight room. And I'm not. I'm saying that if you are only lifting, it can be at your detriment. I believe that we should chase infinite speed, not infinite strength. That athletics, the weight room that helps athletes, is not a bodybuilder's weight room,
right?
And not a power lifter's weight room. And that's where the art of the weight room comes in, is that we have to do things that really supplement movement. And sometimes people don't do that.
There is a cap to everything. I mean, you can run your legs into the ground. You can lift to where we limit all of this. Okay, we squat once a week. And the reason first of all, we found out we had a couple of guys who were, that was their ability. That was their thing. You don't bench, deadlift, and squat pretty much equally. That's kind of power lifters, trap door, which is the weak link. Well, we limited our squats to once a week because we knew this. Well, we do Olympics once a week because you learn that, and we're not lifting the rest of the week. So we have a program, our Monday program, maybe bench dominant, and then we do whatever we do, come in the way we do Wednesday, are the Olympics. Well, there's the catch, there's the front squat. So we didn't just squat once a week. We're doing a front squat into a hang clean front squat push press combination, or a low catch on one of the other lifts. So squatting is in there. We supplement with single leg movements, and then we squat full deal on Friday. And so what we discovered is we lost nothing. Our speed was maintaining. Strides were not shrinking because of restricted movement, either being tight or had one short guy's thighs got too big. He just couldn't open up. And so there's a cap to everything. It's just like you don't run until you drop. And so the lifting is it's called prescription. You're going to be able to get stronger. You get more for less if you know what you're doing. And so I think, at the elite level, the big boy powerlifters bench once a week because that's not all they're doing. And you may supplement it with an incline or whatever, but it takes a while for you to lose your strength. So you have to simply stay in touch and be able to come back and repeat. program design is really the bread and butter of what we do.
No doubt. And with respect to like speed, when we dive into the speed elements of things, um, are there 2 to 3 exercise or movements? It could be stuff with sprinting that you do, could be stuff with that you think really translates. And I'll kick this to Tony first. That translates into improved speed. Um, is there anything from that standpoint that you say, you know what, we've got to do these 2 or 3 things if we're going to be fast?
Yeah, first of all, in the weight room, once again, this is controversial, but I say that I cannot pick a single lift in the weight room and say, if you're good at this, I guarantee you you're going to be fast.
Yep.
I can't, like people say, well, you're not right because cleans are really explosive. But I've seen slow guys that could clean well. So, and I'm not speaking against the weight room or against any lifts. I believe strength is really good. But the things I can watch an athlete do and know how fast he's going to be for me is his ability to jump. If I see a 5'10" kid dunk the basketball easy, I think he probably is going to be on my 4x1. I mean, that is a great KPI. So jumping, RSI, the ability to absorb force and then generate force. I realize you're not really absorbing force. You're putting force into the ground, preventing collapse, but the ability to bounce off the ground. And that's why I say the 5 things that we want to train athletes with is sprint, lift, jump, bounce, throw. And people say, well, isn't bounce and jump the same thing? It's really not, because you're not really bouncing when you dunk a basketball, but you are bouncing when you have a ground contact time of a sprinter of 1/12 of a second. When if your ground contact time is 0.08, you are hitting that ground with such a loaded foot that you bounce off the ground, and the ability to jump over invisible boxes, we just call them, box jumps, the ability to jump over a box and then bounce off the ground, or do a triple broad jump where you go like 31 feet because you're just bouncing off of every single landing. Those things, I think, indicate speed, and therefore we want to take everyone, not just the cheetahs, but we want to take the big cats too, and teach them how to jump and bounce and sprint.
Perfect sense. Bob?
The thing that we like to talk about is that the sprinting, lift, run, jumps, what I mentioned last time. We lift, we run, we jump. Squats, slow movement. Okay, jumping reminds the body how to go fast after doing a slow movement like squats. Therefore, we have complexes. We go squat, jump, sprint. And so the last thing the body remembers is acceleration, velocity, the stuff we're really wanting to gain out of everything. So if you don't put jump in there somewhere, you're not teaching the body how to be fast or reminding it how to be fast after the slow movement of certain weightlifting, Olympics being the exception with the velocity required on the bar. So that's a very key point. We were doing that yesterday. I got a free agent in, and we have to get him oriented because he's basically now got to try out again. So
right.
He's a veteran player, so we're almost having to reteach some things so he can, the eye test matters. It goes back to, we have all little tricks we use to try to get it to where when they're running and all that, a coach is like, what did he just do? And so we play with that, but the idea is that he has got to be able to translate, weights to running to jumping, and jumping is that link that we use to, make that happen.
I'll tell you what, that was one of the biggest eye openers for me. You know what I mean? When especially for our guys, high school guys, right? Like their ability to jump, and we're talking either broad jump or vertical, right? Like just any of that, one, it's something that a lot of them, they think football and they think, why am I jumping? Like that's one of probably the least skills that goes into when you're talking football. Like coach, when am I going to jump? You know what I mean? But you got to explain to them. And we have, and they have bought in really well that look, the ability to jump and the explosiveness that goes along with it correlates directly to how fast you are and those types of things. So when we started to link it all together, man, I'll tell you what, we put that broad jump, you put that tape out there and you know, Tony, to go along with your program, you know, the rank, record, publish thing, you put that tape out there with a mark and now they know, oh, damn, we're tracking something here or we're looking at something here. Like coach is going to record this. It just adds a whole different element. And I believe you referenced one time on one of the shows, Tony, talking about, look, there's never a guy who's not going to try to do his best in the vertical jump. Nobody's going to get on that mat and say, I'm not going to jump as high as I can right here. So that gauge alone in talking with the bounce and the jumping ability with our younger guys and our guys that are now kind of developing and going through it, like it's just added a whole different level when now they can link that directly to their explosiveness and they want to talk, coach, how do I get my jumps better? Right. And that's before you even talk about, you know, when you go to some of these showcases or college camps or whatever, that they're going to measure that, right? Like they all think, oh, it's going to be 40. It's going to be, you know, 5, 10, 5 or shuttle. But most programs now have thrown in that, hey, we're going to do a broad or we're going to do a vertical, right? Because they know just as well, like 40 is the 40, but if I have a guy that can explode and his jump numbers are good, at least I know I have something that I can work with, and then we can tweak and look at the other things. So it's a great point by both of you talking about the jumping ability and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
I think it's so important, that stress, because a lot, especially with football.
You bring up a really good point, Derek. Really good point. So the broad jump and the vertical jump, to me, measuring those two gives you a good idea of the capacity of speed that an athlete's going to have a chance to attain. Doesn't mean that he does attain it, right? You might have guys that, like, you know, some basketball players who might have 40-inch verticals that never get to that level for a variety of reasons. Maybe they're you know, 6'8" and they never get to be able to turn it over the way they need to, right? But or generate the force they need to. But it's a capacity thing, that vertical jump and the broad jump combined. And this could be like a really short answer because it's really not part of my question. I want to dive into something else before, because I don't want to hold you guys too long. But I'm curious, are we kind of in agreement on that? That's something that really should be measured to really see what the capacity is of your athletes?
I think it's a good tool. Yeah, I think it's a great tool because testing needs to be, like we're talking about here, you know, it's got a relevance to it, but it's really a kind of a secret motivation to the kids, because every one of them wants to improve. Everyone, he wants to see what I do last time. You do anything, you know, some random month away, and they go, what did I do last time? How much did I do last time? So we want that.
Absolutely.
And it needs, testing to me is to evaluate your program. You know, kids want to see the improvement and all, but if you're looking at a flat line from week 1 to week 6 to week 12, it's like, wait a minute, something's wrong with your program if you have a flat line between tests.
Yeah, I'll just throw in really old school programs sometimes would time the 40 at the start of the summer and again at the end of the summer. And yes, that could be an evaluation of your program. But what I say is that testing is training and training is testing, that the measured performance is really what, as Bob says, really motivates kids. You know, motivation, I think a lot of coaches think motivation comes from long speeches, and it doesn't. Motivation truly comes from progress. I'll never forget trying to learn how to play a guitar, and I just never progressed. And you're not going to stick with something that you're not good at. But
which, by the way, Tony, not to cut you off, but your boy Chris Corfus started our podcast playing the guitar, just so you know.
Yeah, I know. I'm seriously jealous, and I think I see Stevie Ray Vaughan behind Bob right now. Is that Stevie Ray Vaughan back there?
Stevie Ray Vaughan. My guitars are on the wall over here.
Oh,
now you're talking our world. You're talking to Jersey guy here, man. Like Stevie Ray Vaughan. Like, come on now.
Yeah, we're going to go blues, baby.
I love it.
Bend it.
No, it's
Nope,
phenomenal. No, it's cool.
I'm curious. First off, I'm going to bring this question up just to make sure everybody kind of is in tune with it. But there's a lot of talk on fascia training or fascia development. Are I'm sure you guys may have seen some of this stuff on it. I'm curious your thoughts on fascia training, elastic-based approaches. Are they important? Are they overhyped? Is it already integrated in your programs to an extent that it doesn't have to be pointed out per se? I'm curious. I don't know who would like to tackle that one first.
Oh,
All
thanks,
right, Tony,
Bob.
you got it, Tony. Go ahead.
Yeah, there you go, Tony.
I have a short
Okay,
answer. So
I
go
may be
ahead.
I may be 67, but I know Chat GPT. So this morning in preparation, I looked up fascia training. Serious, I actually did, and it said that Tony Holler's Feed the Cats addresses this in an organic way. So I think that's like the perfect answer. But there are a few things. A few things I talk about with fascia. One is we're big on what used to be activated and now is RPR, reflexive performance reset, that we are really working along with fascia. And then the other thing that I want to mention is that I've always said that we need to see speed through a neurological lens, which to me is electrical. Think of your wires, your nerves, that your muscles are dumb. All they can do is contract and relax, but our nervous system is what allows for massive contractions. And probably the most underrated thing in all of sports is the subsequent relaxation, because if you have a big contraction that does not quickly relax, you tear muscles. And that's why we sprint, because there's nothing that works on that CNS contract relax cycle better than running 10 meters a second. That we are forcing our quads and our hamstrings to contract and relax quickly, which I'm not sure we're able to do that in the weight room very well. I do like what Bob talked about with conjugate training, French contrast, things like that, where you can address some of those things by doing pogo jumps or hurdle hops after squatting, and then getting a sprint in or something. But I love all types of conjugate training, but I think that the whole idea that it's electrical and fascia, of course, conducts electricity and stuff. So, that's all I got to say. Bob, you have anything about fascia?
No. I mean, I've seen it. I've got guys doing it. It's like, brother, man, you're working on a market share, market space. I mean, it's I think I want to hit my limit at PNF stretching. All right, we're going to use that. If it is a fascia backdoor, great. But we gained a little bit when they added the word or the phrase dynamic mobility. Well, I think we've been doing that for decades. I just never called it that. Right. We're starting to get, and if I'm wrong, I don't care. It just is that we're starting to get into the world of reinvent the wheel. Okay. And you pick up, well, obviously don't go online. It'll mess you up. But even some, journals and magazines or, vendors that are selling stuff, we're reinventing the wheel. And I'll give you an example. This is awesome, and I endorse it. I mean, personally, and not, corporately. One year I was thumbing through one of the trade magazines, and they showed the training partner, I believe it was named. And I looked at it real close. I'll be damned. That's an extra genie. We had that in high school in 1967, which had to be existing before that to even have it then. That came up in college that we had to use that I hated. And so it, time has passed. It is 100% made the same, and it's 100% effective. But basically it came out from extra genie to training partner because it had a better, a name. I used the product. It's great for single, individual training, and it's got a long, ability. It can go 30 yards or more. And so the deal is the training partner, they didn't even reinvent the wheel. They just renamed it. So they put a new label on it and brought out the same product. That's where we are in the training. I think, I like to say, here it is. We know more about what we already know. So we can attach, scientific names to it, or phrases, or Latin, or whatever you want. But even in the Roadrunner cartoons back in the early days, they would put that Roadrunner and freeze the frame, and underneath it put Roadrunner, and then they had some made up Latin name, Fastus Bertus, and so it's not new. We've reinvented the wheel over and over and over. The early days, the guys that I learned from had it right.
Well, I think I think there's one element to it that I think does make sense, is compartmentizing the training for people who don't understand all the elements as well. Meaning, training now, and me and Derek see it. I'm sure all you guys see it. Like, a guy pulls up an Instagram page, he's training. You know what I mean? And so if we can get some of these younger guys to be able to at least understand this exercise is working these things, that's a good step, because a lot of them are just jumping into it with, whatever they did 2 years ago, and they're training kids. And because they're young and because they are electric personalities, some of these guys, they attract a large group, and some of them are great, some of them aren't. But I think the faster training part, the only thing that I thought was really interesting on it is with respect to the lower limb development. And I believe that whether you call it faster training, me and Derek use the dot mat drill for a lot of things, the old BFS dot mat drill, which I still think serves a purpose for a lot of things. Isometric holds with your heel off the ground, standing on the ball of your feet with a bent knee, which I think Chris Corfish talks about that, actually. They kind of call that fascia training to an extent, right? But I really think of it as like ground up. I mean, the foot begins a lot of the stuff, and everything moves all the way up the chain, and whatever they want to call it, you have to develop in each one of those areas to be able to continue to keep athletes, most importantly, injury free. I think, which is what some of that stuff is really trying to do. I'm gonna jump into this as the last question, because I think we really dived into a lot of the other topics here or there. We could always have part 2 at some point if we need to. But the nervous system, and Tony, you brought it up a couple minutes ago. Explain the nervous system and the role of speed training, and how it should influence kind of the design with respect to programs for athletes.
Well, the nervous system, to me, I see all speed training through a nervous system lens. And maybe that's because I don't own a weight room. Because, like in our weight rooms as champions.
Or is that because of your chemist background?
That might be too. That might be too. And believe it or not, I also see sprinting as biochemical, because we know Bob will be interested in this. I have a full chapter in my book that's coming out soon, later in 2026, on dopamine. And 90% of the fastest 100-meter athletes in the country, 90% come from 4 sunshine states: Texas, California, Georgia, Florida. And I guarantee it's not because of the quality of the coaching. I am around some of the greatest coaches up in Illinois and Wisconsin and Minnesota, really, really good track coaches. The only thing that's better in those 4 states, track and field wise, is sprinting. The only thing. Well, that and jumping, which is done by people who are really fast. But the throws are better up here, and the distances are better up here. So it's not track and field is epic in those 4 sunshine states. Sprinting is, and that comes from dopamine. We get dopamine mainly from sleeping a lot, which teenagers don't do very well, and from being in sunshine. And if you are, I just got back from Alaska, where they don't get much sunshine, and you ought to see their school records in Alaska. They are slow as crap. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not because of bad coaching. It's because of this lack. So I see it through a chemical lens. I also see it through a nervous system lens. And this is the big thing about the nervous system, is that if we have a depressed nervous system due to lack of sleep, too much aerobic conditioning, or just general depression, you are not going to be fast, and you are not going to get faster by training. That if a kid comes in dragging, and I say, "What's up?" He goes, "Coach, I didn't sleep well last night. My parents were fighting, and I go home and take a nap. Go home and take a nap." No, coach, I'm okay. That kid will not get anything out of a speed workout if he has a depressed nervous system. And so that is totally different than old school coaching, because what did we tell kids that were dragging? Hey, rub some dirt on it. We're going to run your ass off today. So things are different in that way. So yeah, I want people caffeinated. I don't mean necessarily caffeine, drink a Celsius, something like that. I want people to feel caffeinated before a speed workout.
Very good. Bob.
Let me see. Give me a little more context. I want to, when he was telling.
Where does the nervous system, right? The CNS and
yeah,
where does it? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good. Good.
Yeah, it's everything. I want to try to go the 25-word or less route, and
Go ahead.
Which I can't. While Tony was talking, I thought, here's what I want to say, and then he got good at what he was saying. I thought, man, I don't know if I have anything, but the nervous system is everything. It's just the lights go off, the lights go on, and so we use, to try to sound smart, we use the phrase neuro fatigue, and so. I read one time in a journal or something like, we do not know what really causes muscular fatigue because it goes forever. If you can supply it with glycogen or whatever it needs to contract, it'll contract. The nervous system, on the other hand, is subject to fatigue and shutdown. So it has to rest. And I've said it 2-3 million times. The best performance enhancing item you can come up with is sleep, because it refreshes. It's global, right? But especially the nervous system. And so I think you alluded to it, Tony. I've sent kids home, come dragging in from school, and no sleep, exams, girlfriends in their whatever, parents or parents. It's like, just go home and come back Saturday or something. And so that's not punishment. That's for their benefit and mine. So we don't get into this. So the nervous system cannot be neglected. Coach, I don't know, I'm not a neurologist and I don't know a great deal about it to teach anything, but to say that coaches need to find out how to recognize that. And so I've done it with the kids, like I just said. I've sent teams in, when we're just dragging ass, and for whatever reason, globally, we're just, we're not working. I'll bring the coaches over and say, look, I'm getting ready to send the team in, and don't be objecting, because they will, because we can do it. But I'll bring them up and say, all right, guys, not looking too good. Take it to the house. We'll try again tomorrow. No, coach, we can stay. Go. And so I have sent the entire team in, just because you're not getting anything done. You're getting a frustration level that is counterproductive and damaging. So, that's a big part of it. Neural fatigue matters.
Great end to everything. But before I let you guys go, I can't thank you enough for coming on and discussing this stuff. And we could probably go on for hours on this. If there's a couple points you'd like to leave us with, I'll let you go first, Bob, and then I'll let Tony go, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, I use this all the time with people. It's like, you get up, go to work hard, make everybody around you better. That's my
Tony.
I love that. I was going to mention something about sleep. I keynoted a Nike clinic about 6 weeks ago, and the speaker before me was Mitch Krauser, the father of Ryan Krauser, who's won gold in the Olympics, the last everything,
Yeah.
right? World record holder. Now this is really important. He was a basketball player in high school. He's 6'7", 220. and a quarterback. His third favorite sport he was pretty good at, which was throwing a shot and discus. Okay. But to be to throw 77 feet, the 16-pound shot, you got to weigh 320. So one of the hardest things that he had to do is gain weight through muscle mass and through explosive muscle mass. And Mitch told me that until they got him up to 10 hours of sleep a night, that no major changes happened. And so my question is, how in the hell do you sleep 10 hours a night? I mean, wouldn't that be great to learn? Okay, here
Amazing.
you go. I'm going to tell you right now what he told me. This is a life hack. First of all, you set your bedtime. You don't wait till you're tired. You set your bedtime. Number 2, hour before the bedtime, you dim the lights, turn off all screens, phone, computer, TV. Then for your sleep, you need total darkness, 60 degrees, which is like see your breath cold, and heavy blankets. He sleeps with like a 15-pound blanket. And I'm like, gosh, I've lived for 67 years and everybody's told me how important sleep is, but nobody told me how to sleep more. So I think sharing those kinds of things, and he didn't say that in his presentation. I had to ask him at breakfast, how do you sleep 10 hours? But it's those types of relationships as coaches that we can really learn from.
No doubt. Learn from you guys is fantastic. It's really awesome having the opportunity to have you guys discuss some of these topics. We'll have to do it again at some point in the future. Maybe get some other guys on too. Really, really great stuff. And as always, I can't thank you enough for you guys coming on and giving some of your time.
Good to meet you.
There's no doubt the coaches that watch this, there's no doubt the coaches that watch this will really appreciate it. And it's phenomenal. It's amazing. So many of the guests that we have on actually watch, all of you guys, So that's the cool part to me. Like, oh yeah, I watched so-and-so, talk about this, or so-and-so talk about this. So I think that's really cool. And I can't thank you enough for you guys coming on and talking about these topics today. So you guys have a wonderful day. It's beautiful here in Jersey today. I don't know how it is where you guys are, but it's beautiful today in Jersey.
All right. Well, enjoy.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Guys.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right. Goodbye.
All right.
Bye. Take care, fellas.
Bye. Thoughts?
It was awesome. Everything and more so from what you would expect from two really, really high end, top of the notch, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm going to take their opinions and the things that they feel are important over a lot of other guys. One, because they've been in it. They've done it for a really long time. There's something to be saying about experiences and just seeing the trends and what's popular now. And just the thing I respect the most about both of them is, yes, they have their beliefs and how they look at things and how they feel like, development, and from their standpoints, you do it this way or that, but it's that they continuously look for other avenues and other ways to continue to improve and educate themselves and listen to other guys, even if they're sitting there going, this guy's full of shit, you know what I mean? Or that's bullshit. Or that's bullshit, you know what I mean? But they still go out and they still do things right. It's just they're in the world of, they just do their best to kind of continue to educate themselves and improve and make tweaks to their systems and do all the things, but they still have that, hey, this is what I believe and I'm going to stand on it. But I'm also willing to kind of tweak it and go back and forth with kind of whatever can help our athletes get better, or whatever I can do to help you as the coach to implement these things, right? Like they're still willing to do that. And I think that's the best part, because, guys that are willing to give back to others and help guys, move the needle and whatnot, like that's awesome, and, so to get those two guys and their take on everything, it's awesome. You know what I mean? Like I really look at them as, kind of that hierarchy, or that, the guys that are at the top of it. of who you want to reference and who you want to listen to and who you want to, what direction would you want to go? Well, look, it's going to be my way. I'm going to put my own thing on it, but I'm going to listen to these two guys a little bit more than I'd listen to some others, just because for me, that experience factor, having been in it for a really long time, and they're also very diverse, right? Like, Tony's by definition a track guy, right? Bob, by definition, started in hoops with football, right? But they both, can expand, like that's their area of quote expertise, I guess. But they also know how to implement it within other individuals, whether it be male, female, high school athletes, college athletes, pro athletes, Olympians. You know what I'm saying? Like they've worked with every group. And that's what I take from it with those guys. It's really cool that they also very much understand that, you work with an Olympian or a pro, it's very different than if you're working with a high school kid, and they take that into account in everything that they do, you know what I mean? With the approach to it and the structure of how they build and develop, the athlete from the ground up.
No doubt about it. It's so interesting. Like I do actually love Bob's like conjugate training where the different speeds from a lifting standpoint, like you're going slow, then you go into a box jump, like really good, and like he articulates that incredibly well, and obviously Tony really with the combination of the speed development, but not just the speed, really the nervous system approach, and the total package of rest, combined with going all out, really, moves the needle to me. And it's very interesting to listen to those guys. And then one thing I knew that they were going to be different on was going to be conditioning. That was the one thing we knew just from our podcast with each guy.
Absolutely. And Tony stood on that pedestal, right? Like, and maybe pedestal's not the right word, but he just has that very different approach.
That's his ground. And Bob has his ground, and they're kind of really far apart on that.
More, and that's kind of whatever. And even at the same point, like even being like polar ends of the spectrum, right? Like they're on total different opposite sides of how to handle that. There's still common ground somewhere within it that both understand it. You know what I mean? And they like, even Tony sometimes he's like, yeah, I get that sometimes like football is different. At some point you do have to kind of find where that grit is or that push is, but 90% of the time, less is more, right? Whereas Bob still has that, look, you still got to do some of this shit. And if I was in it today like that, I would still do it. Yeah, so you know what? Like, and that's
that's very interesting, right? I thought that was the most interesting part of the whole debate to me, as far as they were so different on that.
And that was expected. I totally expect that. Yeah, no, it was expected. But also, like, it's just so, but it's so cool. Like, you know what I mean? Because it's just so cool to see it. Because again, both also recognize that you could do it either way and still be successful, or do it that way and fail, right? Because again, we always talk about there's 1,000 ways to win. Right. And that's just kind of what goes into it. It's how do you want to do it and how do you approach it and what works for your guys. And that was something that they brought up with almost every question is your programming has to match what you're working with. Right. You can't do the same with an Olympian that you can with a sophomore in high school. Like it just doesn't work that way.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Great stuff. That really was really, really good. I think that worked out really well. We're gonna have to figure out some more guys that we think are in like similar space, but might have some different views on things to get together and do another one. With two different guys. Maybe in the football world, maybe a run and shoot guy and a wing T guy, or something like those kind of things. Or a guy whose philosophy is longer practices versus shorter practices, or just something that they're probably mostly the same. Most guys are, there's a lot of things that they're common on, but it's interesting when there's something that there is a stark contrast on.
A little bit of differentiation,
Yeah, and by the way, two guys that are wildly successful in what they do. So that's the other part, right? Which tells you also that, like, as a coach, it's important to learn what fits for what you're doing, and really have knowledge in that base and knowledge for what fits for your athletes. because you can succeed in multiple different ways. It doesn't mean that it's the optimal way. It may be not optimal and still work for your program better. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Like,
Absolutely.
you,
Might not be
you know
the
what I mean?
best way,
It may
but
not
it
be,
is what it is.
no, it might not be optimal, but your kids respond to it and make somehow they play better, right? Like that's why it's not everything. Like there's science to it, right? Like there's no doubt there's science to certain things, and then there's a little bit of art, right? Like, you know, how I talk to this kid might work really well for him, and if I talk to this other kid that way, forget it. He can't handle it.
No
And
doubt.
that's why, like, when people are like, does some coaches work? You know, I love this kid, this coach, this player loved this coach, and then didn't like this coach. Well, and they both are successful. It doesn't mean that one coach is bad and the other coach is good. It means that that coaching style worked for that kid, and this coaching style didn't work for that kid, right? And you know, it's important to be able to understand that. And look, there are some coaches that are, you know, really, really great. And, you know, like I use Bob Hurley's my example of you're gonna have to get on his page. You know what I'm saying? Like his page, if you're able to get on his page, not Bob Hurley, I'm sorry, Dan Hurley. If you get on Dan Hurley, if you get on his page, he's going to take you very close to the promised land, or maybe completely to the promised land.
He's going to get
But
you
it
where
may
you want
not
to
work
go.
for you. It may not work for you, right? So you might be there, and you're like, you know what, I can't get better under this style because for whatever reason, your mindset, how it works, doesn't work. You have to go somewhere else, right? So, you know, and then you know you watch the UCLA women's coach who won the national championship, and her style is different. Not that she's not tough or anything like that, but the way that she treats the
Just the way she
girls
does it.
is yep, and it works with those girls. It worked really, really well, and it turns out they win a national championship with the right group of girls responding the right way to that stimuli, and so it's I find it really interesting. And that's why I like to love talk. That's what I love about this, talking to these guys and hearing all these different things, and then you as the viewer can draw your own conclusion. This works for my program. This doesn't work for my program.
No doubt.
And
Because
our
but that's
job is
part of it too. That's part of to me, the fun of it, right? Or it's what gets you kind of going is, hey, this might, oh, it was always this way for so long, and now that's not how it is. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what we're doing, right? That's not the way, like, maybe we need to tweak some things, or maybe we need to do something else like this, right? Or, and that's where, that's part of like figuring out what pieces to the puzzle are going to work. Right. And it's just, it might not be what you think it is. It might be a totally different approach. That's really hard for you to have to now go and stand on it, because that's just not what people expect. Right. Or that's not how it always was, or whatever it is. Because you still have pushback from the top down onto how to do some certain things and whatnot, because that's just, it is the way it is. Or maybe you were coached that way and now you're not. Like, it's just, that's what's great about it, is you got to find what works for you individually, and then also go and now execute and be willing to work around it. And it might change year to year, right? Like, standards are there, but at the same time, you might have to tweak some things overall if you really, really want to consistently, right? And I stress the word consistent, because anybody can win, 1 year and be done, but can you continuously do it over and over and over with the ever-changing amount of outside variables that play into it? That's a lot.
no doubt about it. Very well said. All right, what are we back next, big guy?
Tomorrow we have Daniel Budd, who's coming on. He created, he's a high school football coach, but he has really like kind of made his mark. He put together so many of these football templates for coaches that could use. And I just thought it was really interesting, because we're all kind of looking for a cheat code when it comes to some of those things. And he's really kind of, so I'm really curious to, one, to, just what the hell, how the hell and why the hell did you really come up with an idea to just like, hey, let me create these templates across the board, whether it's, I mean, look, whether it's depth charts, whether it's, practice plans or, game day calling sheets or whatever it is, like he's put together these templates for all ages, all levels. I thought it was really cool and really interesting. On top of, you know what I mean? Like creating just another element of the game that coaches sometimes are like, wait, what do I have to do? Or wait, what do you mean? You know what I mean? Like how do I navigate that world? I thought it was really cool. So I'll look forward to talking to him tomorrow.
That's great stuff. Very, very cool.
And we're an hour later, 11 a.m. for him because we got a little Central Time action happening.
Today, Wednesday?
Today is Wednesday, sir.
Okay, so it's Thursday. Okay, good.
Tomorrow.
All right, perfect, man. I can't wait.
Awesome.
All right, man. Have a great day.
Buddy.
Great job.
Talk to you later.
That was a ton of fun.
Those guys are the best, bro.
Follow up with those guys. Make sure they enjoy.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I know. There's no doubt. There is absolutely no doubt because I know, like Bob was really looking forward to it and it's really funny because you're talking to quote unquote elder statesmen of the game, like neither had heard of either of the other, right? So that was what was great too because this is like, wow, this is gonna be great. I was like, this is gonna be a totally, you know what I mean, like eye-opening experience for some, right? Because they don't know each other, and they haven't.
That's when I thought when I interviewed.
And
Bob,
I'm sure they went and did. I'm sure they went and did some of their research on certain things. You know what I mean? Like, Bob's probably the first guy where we brought up Tony Holler, where he was like, "Yeah, I don't know who that is."
That's why I thought it would be a great debate because there wasn't going to be as much.
There was no preconceived notion of like who it was. Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know who that guy
they weren't going to gear their thoughts based off of knowing the other person.
Previous knowledge.
They didn't know the
100%. Yeah.
So that made it, I think, a unique. I have to say, like, of all the people we've interviewed, like, he was one definitely. I'm sure others did not, but like, I was actually a little bit surprised. You know what I mean? But you know what else is? I thought, and I'll let you go on this. Texas is so developed in and entrenched in their version of training.
They're light years ahead. They are light years ahead in every freaking facet, dude. Like every facet.
Right. They're doing so many different and when he talked about how they're doing stuff all year round, I also thought, that played 100% into what Tony said, the 4 states that.
Dude, that was great. That might have been my favorite thing that I took away from it because I'm so using it as a selling point again to my wife to get out of here and go to a Sunshine State. Like, but that was just because we've talked about it for years, dude. And it's not just
we've always believed better
athletes
right
down there. Correct. But I just not even that specific, but like we've talked about geography and where you live matters. Like 100% matters for if you're really wanting your child, son, daughter to hit that peak level. Like now you actually have some science behind, hey, living here helps, right? Like it's a crazy phenomenon to think about that just like sunshine matters that much, right? But yeah, it does because those are sure as hell 4 of the top football states, no doubt. And I bet you could go across any, and I like that. And even Tony's like, dude, like, I get it. But like, you want to go fast. If that's what you're looking to get out of it, going fast, then you got to like, these are the states that you probably want to live in. Not to say that it can't be done in others, but it's going to be harder. And the other ones, these 4, just, it's what we've seen. Right? Like we're looking at data and this is what it is.
It's incredible. In the states that these guys are from. So I was just looking at the top 10 performances in 100 meters all time. Okay. In high school. The guy just recently from Florida ran 9.88, right? And so he's from Florida. Then It's Texas, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Florida. There's a guy from North Carolina, which is amazing, actually. He must really been good.
Right.
Texas, Florida, Jamaica.
There you go.
And Jamaica, you could throw
Jamaica's
in, by
on
the
the
way.
equator.
Jamaica is the same as being in Florida or Texas. So for
Yeah, no doubt.
right.
If not more,
So
right?
basically,
If not more sunshine there.
right. Not so 10 of the 11 were from goes right to where what Tony talks about. 10 of the 11 are from places that you could do this stuff all year round, and and the Alaska thing is the extreme example. I mean, I
And
don't
he
think
just
it's
got back.
Siberia or yeah, I don't think it's Siberia or Alaska. You're finding too many elite sprinters. You know what I mean? So
No, but you are
um,
finding a lot of, you know what I mean? Like there's other things that they're good at. We're just talking
you are
speed.
things you will find. Right. When you talk about distance runners, shot putters, I bet you
Right, like
look
Tony talked about that. The throwers, the
linemen,
distance runners, like bigger bodies, all
linemen.
that kind of stuff. Like that's where it is. Why do you think? Why is it always that the quote unquote Big Ten, when it used to be based in the Midwest, basically, always had really good running games? Like because their O lines were massive.
Right. Right. And not getting quite as much sleep and eating more
Huge factor.
probably because of it is a big factor in them becoming
Huge
big
factor.
boys, So, but it's very interesting. Very interesting. All right. Well, we'll see you tomorrow at 11.
11.
And this works with you sending me the picture, and that
Yeah,
way
yeah, yeah, no
I
doubt.
just scroll back. Like I literally, until I go do everything, I just scroll back up to what you sent me, and that's what I'm,
Perfect.
that's basically what I'm putting in. So
Amen.
it works really well that way.
All right, man.
All right, man.
Sounds
I
good,
will
buddy.
talk to you
Enjoy
later.
the
Great
enjoy
job.
the good weather. Enjoy the nice weather.
Yeah, thank God. I'll enjoy it because I heard next week's gonna be 30 again. So
Hey, why not? Why wouldn't it go from 90 to 30 in a week in New Jersey in spring? At least it's not like last spring where it rained every day.
you're gonna have to give your wife a printout of like the top athletic things and the top recruits and the top, like, here's the printout of what you need. And you might do on the girl side. Here are the top.
Well,
where
that's
the
what I'm
top,
saying. I just want my daughter to be fast. Like, because that's one I will
and she
definitely
already is. You
vicariously
said
live
right.
through.
She already is
Yeah.
genetically.
Dude, she hit
Right.
the turf last night after our game, and she was out. It's awesome. And she just likes to run. Like, it's like crazy. I don't know. I don't know if it's because the winters here are where she's inside for a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, and she can't really get out there and run. I don't know if she just likes the sunshine. I don't know if it's because she's already been to Florida a bunch of times where
Right.
she loves that aspect of it. I don't know what it is because I never liked to run like that. My wife sure as hell didn't like to run like that, but she just likes to take off and go. And I don't know, maybe it's an age thing. I don't know. I'm hoping it's not a phase. I hope she loves it or whatever, but hey, it is what it is. I'll use it as a rallying point.
I mean, she's gonna be super fast, is what it means.
I hope so, brother. Because I sure as hell wasn't, and I would love to vicariously live through her and say, "God, go win a race."
Well, actually, here's what's funny. Your daughter is how old right now?
2.5, give or take. She'll be 3 in July.
Okay, so she's gonna be 3 in July. So you're starting to already, because you're still a couple ways from like being in organized stuff, a couple years.
Oh yeah,
But like
close.
You're already starting. I already hear you starting to sound like it's kind of like when with you start to see it as the first time. Oh wow, she moves really well. Like
Yeah.
it goes right into your head, and you're like,
No doubt.
I don't care who you are as a parent. It goes right in your head. You're like,
It's
okay,
like, and it's also like the whole like,
should I gear them
she
to
kind of
this?
looks right, or it's like, hey, she kind of like looks coordinated, whereas most other
Right,
2.5-year-olds that I see like they're tripping over this or they're tripping over that. And don't get me wrong, she falls a whole bunch, but she falls with style. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then
Right.
She has the ability to like when most kids are really like taking a header, she like can like figure it out to be like, oh, I didn't get hurt because I did this. And, you know, also they talked about a lot of like the jumping and the bouncing and all those kind of things. Like, dude, like, and this might be a phase going through too as well. You know what I'm saying? But like, the kid just wants to jump off or jump on anything. And I don't know if that's because she's literally had like a little trampoline since she was whatever, and that she loved to bounce, or because her, you know, her cousins, when she goes over there, she's on the big trampoline with them, but the kid just likes to jump onto or off of whatever, which for my wife will cause a stroke at some point. But, you know, she don't like, she goes. Playground too, same thing, dude. Daddy, put me on the monkey bars. And it's like, baby, I don't know if you can, you can hang by yourself as a 2.5-year-old.
That's good. That's very good.
I'm like, shit, dude. Like, right. And look, first time, like, I don't know, like, so, but then I'm going and, you know, looking, thank God, again, ChatGPT, right? Like, but like most 2.5-year-olds cannot support their own weight. And you're like, oh, okay, well, okay, there we go. Or most 2.5-year-olds can't jump on a trampoline and land and then jump again. You know what I mean? Like that motion itself is without like holding on or something of that nature. Like you just start to see, and you're 100% right. You start to see those things, and then in your head, you're like, oh, track this way. Oh, track this way. Oh, track this way. But got to really focus on keeping a very wide net and a wide range of whatever to just kind of let her do her thing, and we'll figure it out as we go, man.
It's cool. That is really the monkey bars on the playground. Like,
yeah, dude,
you immediately you start to see, oh, my kid's willing to take chances, or my kid is not willing to take chances.
Dude, highest slide in the place, right? Like,
yep,
no fear factor, whatever, right? Like, Daddy, I'll climb this. I mean, oh, there's a rock wall. Oh, okay, well, Daddy, help me. How do I do that? Hey, just put your feet here, your hand there. Okay, Daddy, like, boom, 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 boom. Oh, okay. Right. Oh, and she also
Big
like,
deal.
you know, for 2.5-year-old dude, like the listening and like, you know, she'll take it and she'll go. Right. And it's like, oh, that's not normal. Right. Because very independent. Me. Like I do. Like, okay. Like, got to raise a strong woman in this world. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's definitely going to have her opinions. If she's anything like my sister, you know what I mean? Where never had to worry about who she was dating, because that poor guy, I felt bad for that poor guy because that's just how she was. You know what I mean? Like, I'll take that any day, you know? So we'll see, man. I know.
All right, cool.
God help me.
Stuff.
All right, buddy. We'll see you tomorrow.
Awesome. All right, Blair.